If you have ever wondered why professional ASP.NET Core projects are split into multiple projects instead of placing everything inside one Web API project, this video is for you. Welcome back. Today I will explain clean architecture in ASP.NET Core .NET 10 from scratch. We will understand why companies love clean architecture, what problems it solves. By the end of this video, you will understand not only how it works, but also why almost every enterprise application follows this pattern. Let's get started. Clean architecture was introduced by Robert C. Martin, also known as Uncle Bob. The central idea is very simple. Business rules should never depend on technical details. Technologies like SQL Server, Entity Framework, ASP.NET Core, APIs, or even UI will eventually change, but your business rules should survive all of these changes. That's why everything is organized into layers. These circles represent layers of responsibility. The closer we move toward the center, the more important the code becomes. The center contains the heart of the application. The outer layers contain implementation details. Dependencies always point inward. Outer layers may depend on inner layers, but inner layers never know anything about the outside world. Domain doesn't know about SQL Server. It doesn't know about ASP.NET Core, Entity Framework, Web API, whatever. It only knows business rules. If you remember only one thing that from this video, remember it. Domain layer is the most important layer. Everything revolves around the domain. It contains business rules. It contains customer, product, order, invoice, payment, everything about the business. Along with the entities, we place business rules. An order cannot have negative quantity. A payment cannot exceed the invoice amount. A customer must have a valid email. These are pure business. This is pure business logic. This layer has zero dependencies. It is the most stable part of the application. Then comes the application layer. The application layer tells the domain what to do. Think of it as the project manager. It contains use cases, commands, queries, services, interfaces. The application layer says find the customer, validate inventory, create the order, save it, and send confirmation. It doesn't know how data is stored. Instead, it simply asks repository, please save this. The implementation is somebody else's job. That's dependency inversion. Then comes infrastructure layer. This layer contains all of the boring technical fluff. For example, SQL Server, Entity Framework Core, Redis, Azure Blob Storage, email service, RabbitMQ, external APIs, file system, whatever. This layer implements interfaces defined in the application layer. For example, application says I email service. Infrastructure provides SMTP email service. Application says I product repository. Infrastructure provides product repository. Infrastructure depends on application, never the opposite. Then comes presentation layer. This is what users interact with. For example, ASP.NET Core, Web API, MEC, Razor Pages, Blazor, Angular, in mobile apps, whatever. Controllers belong here. Endpoints belong here. And when a request is received, is sent to application layer. which returns a response. It must contain no business logic. Controllers should stay thin. We try to conclude this. Every layer does only one job. Nobody skips layers. Nobody breaks the dependency rule. What are the benefits of clean architecture? Benefit one is SQL Server is changed to Postgres, nothing will break. Business logic stays untouched. If you replace REST API with GraphQL, business logic stays untouched. If you move from MVC to Blazor, business logic stays untouched. Testing becomes easy. You can test business tools without a database, without ASP.NET HTTP, even Entity Framework. Large team can Large teams can work independently. Backend developers, database developers, front end, QA, whatever. All Everyone has clear responsibilities. Clean architecture is not about creating more projects or folders. It's about protecting your business logic from technology changes. Keeps your domain pure. Let the application coordinate work. Put implementation details in infrastructure. And keep a presentation focused on handling requests and response. And always remember, dependencies point inward. Now let's see how clean architecture looks in a real project. We understood the theory and the four layers. Now let's open Visual Studio and see how those concepts translate into an actual ASP.NET Core application. For this tutorial, I have created a clean architecture template using a simple product model. I chose a product because it's easy to understand, allowing us to focus on architecture rather than complex business logic. At this glance, you will notice that instead of one project, our solution is divided into multiple projects. Each project has a single responsibility. The separation is what makes clean architecture powerful. First, we will begin by testing the ASP.NET Core Web API to see the finished application in action before diving into the implementation details. We will walk through the available endpoints, including retrieving all products with pagination, getting a single product by ID, creating a new product, and updating an existing product. Once we have verified that everything works as expected, I will explain the project's internal architecture, folder structure, and how the different layers work together. Finally, we will run both the unit tests and integration tests to ensure the application is reliable and behaves correctly. And then we will wrap up with a brief conclusion and key takeaways. At the center, first of all, I created a domain project. This is the heart of our application. Entities represent our business objects. Product is our main entity. Value objects. Value objects represent concepts without identity, such as money, address. Events. Events. Events are the domain events. Events allow us to react to important business events. Interfaces define contracts that other layers will implement. Exceptions, business specific exceptions, and so domain layer contains pure business logic. It has no knowledge of SPDON framework, SQL Server, or any other external technology. Then comes the application project. Application layer contains our application's use cases. For example, it points to products. Everything related to product features live here. In common contains shared behaviors, interfaces, pipeline components, and reusable logic. Dependency injection. This class registers all application services with dependency injection container. You can think of application layer is the coordinator. It decides what should happen but doesn't know how it's implemented. Then comes infrastructure project. The infrastructure layer contains implementation details. Persistence, for example, persistence contains we configure entity framework core, DB context, repositories, and database access. Migrations, database migrations are stored in migrations folder. Dependency injection is infrastructure services are registered here. Notice the separation. Application layer defines interfaces while infrastructure layer implements them. API project contains controllers, middleware, program CS, app settings, and so on. Controllers, this is where HTTP requests enter our application. Middleware handles cross-cutting concerns such as exception handling, logging, authentication, request processing. Here, program CS is the application entry point. Here we register services, configure dependency injection, and build the application. API project contains almost no business logic. Its job is simply to receive requests, send them to application layer, and return responses. At the end, we can say API depends on the application. Application depends on domain. Infrastructure depends on both application and domain because it implements their interfaces. But domain depends on absolutely nothing. That's exactly what dependency rule means. Dependencies always point inward. By organizing our solution this way, each layer has a single responsibility. Business rules remain independent of frameworks, databases, and UI user interfaces that makes our application easier to test, maintain, and extend as requirements evolve. I hope my small effort will be appreciated. My hard work forward 3 to 4 days and finally documenting in the form of video. See you in soon in some other video. Bye for now.